Welcome to Josh's House of Nerd Podcast.
Hello, Nerd Nation. I'm Josh, and I welcome you to the podcast. Go ahead and go grab an evergreen goblet. No, I'm not going to do that. I was going to reiterate and stuff. Okay, we're going to editing this out. Here we go.
Yeah, right.
No, we really are going to edit this one out. Hello, Nerd Nation. I'm Josh, and I welcome you to the podcast. Grab a cold evergreen goblet of blue milk and make yourself comfortable here at my House of Nerd. In this podcast, we are on the topic of the month, which is character study given to us by Crit. And tonight's movie is Crit's pick, the 2021 revisionist Western psychological drama written and directed by Jane Champion, starring Benidict Cumberbach, Kirsten Dunst, and Jesse Plemons, and revolves around two wealthy ranch-owning brothers, Phil and George Burbank, who meet a widow at an inn, and an inn owner, Rose Gordon, during a cattle drive. And the kind-hearted George is quickly taken by Rose, but the coarse and volatile Phil dislikes her, believing she only wants George's money. Phil also belittles her teenage son, Peter, whom he derides as weak and effeminate. Let's talk about this movie. And as always, John and Crit are right here with us.
With Benidict Cumberbach.
Yeah, that's my daughters pronounce his name like weird and funky all the time. My youngest daughter is always, she's like, Cumberbutt, you're watching a movie about Mr. Cumberbutt. You know, she'll come up with really strange things because she really likes Doctor Strange, and so that's where she knows him from. Anyways, yeah.
The Cumberbutt. I'm trying to remember when I first saw Cumberbatch. What film I saw him first in? Yeah, I can't even remember what movie I saw him first in. It might have been like the Sherlock, when he started doing Sherlock.
Yeah, that was
great. Be my first exposure.
I think I knew him a little bit before that because I knew him when he was in Sherlock, but I can't remember what it was that I knew him from.
Oh, Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy. There we go.
I know him from Star Trek Into Darkness.
Yes, yeah. No, wasn't that after?
Was it?
No, I'm pretty sure that was
fairly certain it was after Sherlock.
Yeah,
I'm sure. I think it's after Sherlock. Yeah. So he was in Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy, and then Sherlock, and then I saw him in Between Two Ferns with Zach Galifianakis.
That is hilarious. I've seen that. That is just freaking funny.
That's
man.
good. But anyways, yeah. So this film was interesting. Crit, thanks for the pick.
Mm-hmm.
There are some. I don't know. So one, I think it captures. It always
interests me, John, when you see a movie like this and you're like, "This is interesting." And I'm like, "Oh, do tell." I want to hear what.
So one, I think the cinematography is fantastic because it seems to capture the grit of the West. Like you can just after you watch this film, you've got to go clean the dirt out of your nose. That's what I felt like. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Okay. Cumberbatch was pretty dirty most of the time in this one.
Yeah, so I think kudos on the cinematography because it just did a really good job of making it feel like
you're in Montana.
Yeah, like it's a dirty, crazy world. So one, I was impressed by that. The duo of Cody Smith-McPhee and Benedict Cumberbatch acting opposite each other, and especially in those interestingly, I don't know if you call them sexual tension filled scenes, but like
it sure felt that way.
Yeah, it sure felt that way. So like those interesting scenes where it's like, burgeoning sexuality from Cody Smith-McPhee, who's like discovering himself, and Cumberbatch, who's this, he is what he is, a gruff Midwestern man, and so it was. I think it did a really good job of
takes
being
on that too.
Yeah.
When we get down the road a little bit about that tension and if it was how much was real and how much wasn't real.
Yeah, how much of it was just Phil.
Well, we know we know the way Phil was, but how much the boy was leading into that to go down the path, we don't know. Anyways, that's a discussion.
That's kind of why I call this a a character study, because the
Mhm.
movie, if you notice, shifts between Peter, the boy, knowing or being uncomfortable in the situation, and then it shifts to Phil being uncomfortable. Like it just like the power dynamic shifts
Mhm.
between these two characters
Big
through the
time.
movie,
Oh, yeah.
and it's such a fascinating thing to watch.
Yeah, no, I think they did a fantastic job with that. Well, and then it leaves you. I think a good character study leaves you thinking about the character, and I think this one leaves
Mhm.
you thinking about the character. You're like thinking like,
Oh, yeah.
okay, is Peter really is Peter a psychopath? Like, is that what it
I'm
comes
gonna
down
say
to?
it crossed my mind, man. It crossed my mind,
I
especially
mean, the
after
fact that he,
the part he gutted that rabbit.
yeah, well, with the rabbit and then the cow, and then basically killing Phil. It's like, is this psychopathic? Like, I'd have to look
Well,
more. I think I need to look more in the definitions.
I have a
but-
little bit different take on it. I took it a little. I did see what you're saying, and I actually even thought it. But there was definitely a kind of a take after I kind of thought about it a little bit that I'm kind of seeing. I saw kind of the angle that was. I wonder if it was going for. I had to rewatch a couple parts because I just really was interested in some of his facial, some of the way that this Cody McPhee. That actor, the young
yeah, Cody Smith McPhee. Yeah.
Cody Smith McPhee. I was just interested in some of the, some of the things he did was so subtle. I thought it was an excellent acting part on his behalf of just how the subtlety of him coming across, and yet you saw clues all over, but you didn't honestly see it up front. You kind of, as it went, you started to notice them a little bit more and a little bit more about maybe what's going on. That's why I thought about the reality of, okay, we know that Phil was most likely, well, he was gay. And it was always leaves in question, kind of, but not. Is the son gay? But he kind of plays into that sexual tension. But you notice he really plays into it after he sees that his mom is being driven to drink by Phil's torment.
Yeah, that's why I don't think he's psychopathic. I think
because of his feeling for his mom.
I think he's cold.
I think that's exactly the reason too.
Yeah, I think he's
Go ahead,
cold
sorry.
and calculated. I think he is he's the type of personality that when he sees a thing, it's not really he's going to do the thing that
Mhm.
other people won't do. And in some sense, that stoicism is kind of seen as a masculine trait, and yet he doesn't present super masculine. So that's why I think it's really his character is really interesting, because from a standpoint of like stoic, always kind of always in control sort of kind of situation and stuff like that, like Peter comes across that way, especially after he breaks from medical school, comes to the for summer break at the ranch, and he's kind of more sure of himself, walking in front of the cowboys and stuff like that, asking Phil straight up. But also, I think he's just very calculating, and that calculating could come across as, kind of psychopathic maybe. But I don't think he actually is, because he's not. He's actually interested in protecting his mother. He's essentially doing what he thinks is necessary, in my opinion, to protect his mother from this person that's basically torturing her.
Yeah,
and even from the
that's
respect
true.
that protecting himself too, because I feel
I
like
don't think
once
he was
kind
worried
of,
about himself. Yeah,
you don't think
maybe.
so?
I don't think so. I really don't think he was worried about himself.
And the only reason I say that is early on in the beginning of the show where they're at the inn, and he goes out and kind of, after calling him a sissy and all this stuff, I wonder if that bugged him. Well, and it did bug him. I don't wonder.
It did,
I know it bugged
but he
him.
also went to school for a whole semester and then came back for summer. So I think he was a different person after he came back for the summer break than he was when he left.
Yeah, I can see that. I can see that there was character growth there, definitely. And then, then he kind of still played like, really when he first got back, he was real keeping away from Phil and, and things like that. But then, but again, I think I see what you're saying is he really still was in control, because he was still, just being himself, even though the Cowboys were, giving him a hard time and teasing him and harassing him and stuff like that. It's interesting though, how that dynamic changes. I always wondered, like, so when the boy finds out that Phil's stash of magazines and sees him in the lake, if Phil started, do you think Phil was like became his friend because he was afraid of everybody else telling what was going on? You think that was a protective thing?
Or maybe
I always questioned, like, why was there such a switch there?
I think part of it is like they now have a shared secret, and Phil may think, just like probably the audience thinks, that Peter is also gay, and so because of that, he's like, oh, we have a shared secret. We both can't really talk about it, but we have a shared secret, that type of thing. And that makes Peter more interesting to Phil as a person, as opposed to just, basically in some sense, an object of redirection from himself.
And you see the shift in that, too, like in his treating of Phil, like the whole offer of the lasso thing, and like the shift from, like, he's still torturing the mom, obviously, but like he's not letting that go. I don't think it was like you're saying. I don't think it's guilt that drove him, guilt of how he treated him to begin with.
He saw a kindred spirit.
Yeah, kind of, and like the shared secret thing, and it's like, okay, hey, someone that might understand what I'm going through, type deal.
Yeah, and I could see that. I could definitely see that, a little bit as well. I did think about, like, okay, why at first when he first kind of turned and started helping the boy, I kept thinking to myself, okay, is he just doing this to be protective of himself? Like, he's afraid that this kid's going to blab about his preferences, or is he going to, or is this genuine? Like, oh, I can see that, hey, we have something in common now. It just, and I don't know, early on when he was calling him a sissy, that hits me as he was deflecting, like he didn't want the people around him. He was protecting himself.
Well, I don't think
from the people around him that might reject him because of the way that he feels.
I mean, maybe, but I don't think Phil equates gayness, his homosexuality, with sissiness. Like, because his idea of homosexuality is informed by his, Bronco Bill, the older, rough cowboy who's super capable and super masculine, right? And so because of that, he doesn't equate the two as the same. Like, maybe there's some redirection there, but at the same time, I think he actually despises the effeminate nature of Peter, not necessarily the maybe a shared homosexuality, which Peter may not have. There's no evidence that Peter actually has that, because he doesn't really start like that sexual tension with Phil until he's kind of deep into the plot of what he was going to do.
The only indication that I got that he might be, other than what you just said, because I agree with you in every way, he made one indication to his mom of, why didn't you bring your friend? And she said something like, well, Phil probably wouldn't like my friend.
Yeah,
but that still doesn't. That's still super vague, dude.
Yeah, I didn't get anything from that about like his sexual preference with his friend. It was more along the lines of, I don't want, my friends to be
exposed to that.
Yeah, to be exposed to this. Yeah, It doesn't seem like it'd be a fun time for anybody involved.
And I saw it more of like what you're saying. I didn't see it really come out until he saw it almost as an angle.
Yeah, it's a way to get close to Phil.
Yeah. And that was his way, into figuring this guy out of what he could do to, help his mom. And actually, clearly he could see also that not only was Phil torturing his mom, but he was kind of torturing everybody, even the brother. By the way, Jesse Plemons did a wonderful job.
He always does.
I can't express how good of an actor he is in everything that we've seen. And he is so mellow, and he plays a lot of similar characters. I'm going to say that, but he does it with such like, I can't even find the right words here. He just does it so well. And he just plays that very low key, character. He even did that in the movie, my famous movie that I didn't like that you put out there, Crit. I'm thinking about ending things.
Yeah.
He that was one thing that I just absolutely thought that was an amazing. It was one of the best parts of that movie was Jesse Plemons' acting. He just does an exquisite job, and he does it here too. But I could see that he was, in a sense, even though it was his brother, it felt like he was being kind of tortured by it too. He almost couldn't feel like he kind of didn't care in a way, but he did. You could tell he did because he didn't even hardly know what to say. He didn't have any kind of very much dialogue with his brother.
Well, yeah, I think it's also an interesting thing to think about George and Phil's relationship to Bronco Bill, and that Phil was probably a victim of Bronco Bill's, right? Like at least they hint towards that with the the wintering and sharing of body heat and stuff like that, and him not answering Peter's question about whether they were doing that unclothed. But also, like, the beginning of the movie kind of Phil's recriminations to George about betraying Bronco Bills, and that George and Phil were, Remus and Romulus, to Bronco Bill. And it's like these type of ideas that maybe they had a shared experience that made them brothers. And in that way, that was interesting. It's a weird, like, and then like how withdrawn and kind of low key George is, and passive that he kind of is. It's a really, it's a weird dynamic. They leave it ambiguous on purpose, which is totally cool, but it does raise the question of like, okay, what was George's relationship then to Bronco?
Because he gets he kind of deflects a little bit more when they start talking about Bronco Bill and how, who taught us this and who taught us that. And he'd bring it up, but he was a little bit more passive about it.
Well, like an abuse victim who doesn't want to talk about it.
Yeah. Wow. I didn't even think about that, Crit, to be honest with you. I didn't even think about that. That was a potential. Wow. That kind of even adds another layer to this movie. That's interesting. Yeah. Of just almost how they're both could be acting out in their own way.
Yeah.
If that's what happened. Wow, that's interesting. And stuff like that. And the one thing that's interesting is what brings all this movie really interesting is how they kind of portray that very differently. Phil kind of portrays it as, being very out there, very, very like loud and very much a jerk to everybody. And yet George is, and George feels alone in all of that. He kind of, maybe this reflects back to that, was why he feels so alone. And that when he finds that kind of person that, he doesn't feel alone anymore with, because he flat out says, I thought that was a really tender moment when they were out there after they just got married, him and Kirsten Dunst's character, and how he's just, I'm just so glad I'm not alone anymore. And that just kind of reflects on, even though he was with his brother, he had everything, he felt still just so horribly alone. And he was so happy that he'd actually found someone that could share his life, because I don't feel like he was maybe feeling like Phil could be any part of that beyond what he was, because he was just so coarse and so, such a jerk. I don't know. Wow. This show is so dynamic. There's so many things.
Yeah, it's interesting to me, and I'm not surprised I missed it when it came out. Its budget was $35 million, and it made $417,000 in the box office. So,
wait, it was actually released.
It was on Netflix.
It was on Netflix. It was. Oh, really? It was okay. And I'm just.
Yeah. It's a Netflix release that they released to the theater.
So they're making
Academy Award.
Okay.
Yeah. So that it would get Academy Award, because remember Netflix.
And that's why I didn't follow this, because I don't really have Netflix. So.
Gotcha.
Yeah, that's what happened. Okay. They put it into their own theaters for a short time, so it could be put as an Academy Award.
Okay, and so the box office is from the time they threw it in the theater. Okay, I get you now.
Yes.
Okay, that
it wasn't like that. It wasn't like a flop or anything.
That was a huge flop.
Yeah.
So,
That would be-
I mean, it is Oscar bait, so I mean, it's the
It
right
is true,
season, it's
yeah.
it's the right thing, but yeah.
It is rated one of the highest, one of the best movies. What did I write down here? I wrote down highly regarded as one of the best movies of 2021 by
I
many
mean, a
critics.
lot of critics love it. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I really enjoyed it. I'm not like disparaging it. I thought that was just interesting because I didn't realize it was distributed there, and I just, I missed it because of that. So, but no, I enjoyed this. I don't know if it's one I'll watch again, but it's one
That's
that
fair.
like
Yeah, that's
you,
fair.
it leaves you, like I said, a good character study leaves you thinking about the characters, and this one did the same thing. You're thinking about the story, sure, but you're thinking about these characters, and like really, I don't know, they stick with you after the film is over.
That's a very true statement. I'll be honest with you.
The only character that I felt was weak in this was Kirsten Dunst's.
Yeah, I was
And
gonna bring that
Really?
up too.
Okay.
It just felt
do
weak.
not
Like
agree,
I
but
understand.
yeah, I want to
Okay.
feel. Yeah.
I
Let me hear.
understand that she's a main motivation for Cody Smith McPhee. But it might just be that because she's this big plot hinge that's needed, that it feels like it just wasn't as important. I don't know.
I think I know I hear what you're saying. I don't think it was her acting. I don't think you're pointing out that her
Yeah,
acting was
no,
bad,
her
right?
acting was fine. Yeah,
I thought
it
her
wasn't
acting was
her acting.
perfect. I don't think in some ways I feel like maybe in some ways she was underutilized. I think she did a fantastic job. I just think that the part wasn't as big as I would have hoped to be, and it felt like at a certain point the
Yeah.
part just went away. Kind of,
And
once it was like the Phil and the boys character,
and it might have felt just a little one-dimensional almost. It's like, oh, she's becoming an alcoholic, and it might be just because there wasn't enough screen time to really investigate her character more, and obviously there's more there, with Peter's father who killed himself, and wait, he did kill himself, right? Yeah,
He did.
Yes,
yeah.
he did.
So that whole thing there, and how that's affecting her, sure. And I think maybe it was just the lack of screen time that caused her character to feel weaker when compared to Peter and Phil. And I know Peter and Phil are like the main story, but I don't know. It just felt like it was a weak point that could have used a little shoring up with maybe just some extra screen time for Kirsten Dunst.
I don't think her acting was weak at all. I think what she did.
Yeah, her acting was great.
So I'm kind of in the middle of your two because I think she did a fantastic job. I thought it was wonderful to see her in a part like this. I think when she was on the screen, I thought she did an excellent job. My only complaint was I don't feel like she was used as much as as much as I would have wanted her to be. But the parts that she was in and the plot line that she did do, I thought was very strong. I just thought she was a little underused. What were you going to say, Crip?
Well, I don't agree that she was underused. I think the character was written in such a way, she signed on to do that character, and then she brought that character to life. That the story isn't necessarily about her journey. I don't think that's, I don't know. I don't know if I'd hold that against either her or the writers or anything else like that. Because, I mean, her interactions with George early on, her interactions with her son and kind of how she approached that as a widower and stuff like that. And then the amazing work between her and Benidict.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, I think, and then, her descent into depression and her descent into kind of, trying to shut everything out. And then she tries to get revenge by selling his hides, which actually opens the opportunity for Peter to do what he did. Because if she hadn't have sold the hides, he would have had to find a different way, to get rid of Phil. And so it's like, I don't know. I think that she was used really well. I think obviously we've all agreed that Kirsten Dunst did an amazing job with the character.
Oh yeah.
I guess I don't have any notes. Not that I would anyway, but I think she was used great. Yeah.
Okay,
I mean, just being able to
Fair
play that awkwardness and that like, oh crap, I have to play the piano, but I've been telling everybody this entire show that I'm not good at this. And yet they keep insisting. And I have to, it's like just the levels of cringe and embarrassment that she has to go through during that that dinner was just so rough.
That was a very awkward scene. That was my secondhand embarrassment was flaring up pretty bad.
Me too. I was having a hard time getting through that scene. I was like, oh crap. That was an interesting scene, and that was an interesting scene for the insight of Phil, even though Phil was not mostly in that thing. Finding out that he was he'd gone to Harvard and done all that stuff, and he was very well educated.
Yeah.
That was a very, I don't know, just the character study part of it came out there of, wow, that's interesting. You wouldn't have seen that come across necessarily unless you were looking for it. And then you kind of look at him a little differently, like, huh. And then you can see it a little bit.
And then just the act of having George go out and try to beg him to come into this dinner party because George knows that he can't carry this conversation. And then they cut to George not carrying the conversation and it being very awkward and not working very well. Like it was so well done.
No, it really was. It really was. I like this movie a lot more than I thought I was going to. I saw it when we went into it a little bit. I went, oh, what am I getting myself into again? I thought it was maybe like I'm thinking about ending things or something. I'm like, oh, it's got Jesse Plemons in it. Okay, we're doing I think about anything. And then I was actually genuinely surprised on how much I enjoyed it. It wasn't like a jump up and down and be like, hooray, and stuff, kind of what you were going back to. I probably won't watch it again, but I wasn't bored at all. I was very, very intrigued. It was very intriguing and kind of sucked me in about all these little different characters and all the different kind of angles. That was, I don't know. Yeah, it was just a very, very well done show. Very beautifully well shot. And then I'm going to be honest with you. I had to really think about, they left clues throughout the whole thing about, him dying. And honestly, I was kind of taken. I honestly didn't understand at the minute. I literally had to think about this at the very end of why Phil died and how Phil died until they said it was anthrax. And I started kind of having to kind of put myself back of, all right, he went into the mountains. He did this. I saw him, he had his gloves out, all that stuff. I thought at first that he was just doing like more of his surgery stuff, but then you start thinking about it. Well, he heard about the anthrax thing and why cows, when he was asking the questions about how cows and calves die. And then the next scene is him going to anthrax to the fields and cutting up hide and drying it. And you're just like, huh. So I had to really think about it because a lot of the hints, in my opinion, were it felt like it was part of the plot and just kind of natural, but I never identified them at first as him going to kill Phil.
Right. Yeah.
It was kind of sneaky, to be honest with you. And that's always like, if someone can sneak up on you a little bit, drop you hints and you might pick up a little bit what's going on here and there, but ultimately see what happened and go. And then when he said, oh, I've got the rawhide, I'm like, I honestly didn't understand where he got the rawhide from either. Yeah. And I had to think back like, oh, that cow that he found that had anthrax. Okay. And stuff. And then when Phil soaked the hand, because they really were, and I knew something was going on with the hand because they were bringing the hand up a little, in some points,
it was a Chekhov's gun.
Too often.
It was a Chekhov's gun. It was a let's show you this loaded gun, and third act it's gonna fire. So
yes, it's exactly right, John. So it's like, okay, something's gonna happen with the hand. Yep. I thought he was gonna get gangrene in it or something, to be honest with you. The way he kept going, I'm fine.
That might have been better.
Yeah, when they were just cut off the hand.
When they were describing how he died, that's the awful way to go.
Yeah, anthrax is no joke.
Oh, it's just sickening. But I honestly had to watch back a few scenes on it. Thankfully, it was on Netflix and I could do that. And watch back a few scenes and kind of put the lines all together of where all the pieces kind of were, and then how it came to be at the end. And then I thought that end scene was just perfect on how kind of, they didn't say anything, but how ambiguous, they left it a little ambiguous, but not so much either. You knew that he had killed him, and maybe you didn't know all the reasons, but it's still that, but it's a very interesting scene how he's looking down on his now parents, and they're embracing. You can see that things have changed and things are happier and things are probably going to be happier, including him, through this little act. And it was almost like, and then as he was reading that scripture, that psalm, just kind of like, it was almost like, so I'll throw this out to you. Do you think that he was reading that, trying to think of himself like, can I live with this? Am I okay with what I did type thing? Or I guess maybe I'm looking for some insight on that final scene a little bit from your guys' perspective of, what was he trying to do? Was he, or do you think he was satisfied with it and okay with the situation at the end? Or maybe you guys saw something different. I don't know. I was a little trying to find more deeper meaning, I guess, in that kind of last few seconds of the movie.
It seemed to me like a justification.
Do you think it was?
Yeah, I think.
Okay,
I think
fair
it was enough. Just a justification for his actions. He's delivering himself, his mother, that type of thing. So, from the situation.
Yeah, I kind of fall in the same boat.
I kind of, I actually didn't think of it that way before. I was thinking of other ways that I just voiced, but I think I fall more into what you guys just said of it being a justification, more from the point of now you understand this kid maybe a little bit more of kind of what his angles were and where he was coming from. And, he knew that he had to get rid of Phil in some way, and whether he genuinely liked him or not, I don't know. That's kind of the ambiguous part. Did he really like him? Was he really going after, was he really gay? Was he not? Was he just using that as a trope to lure Phil down this road to his ultimate, demise? And so, but again, like you said, they kind of leave that kind of open and ambiguous a little bit, which is interesting. I don't mind movies, when they're done in a good way where they leave it a little ambiguous. You have no idea what's going on. This almost leans into, did the bad guy win? Was he the bad guy or the good guy?
Yeah, I'm not sure, because I don't think Peter would have done what he did if Phil was a nice guy. So like this feels more like, in some sense, self-defense or defense of the family kind of thing, as opposed to like there's a good guy and a bad guy. It's more along the lines of like, at least my interpretation is just Phil's an asshole. He just that's who he's always been, and that's who people respect him as, and so he's not going to be any different. He sees a chance to pick on a kid. He does it, or a late teenager. He does that, and then that kind of backfires on him, because he essentially, George introduces into his life this, throws a wrench into his life. I think Phil had a very very particular life in mind for him and the people around him that he cares about. And he didn't want any change. He didn't want interference. He just wanted everybody to continue along this path. And then George kind of threw a wrench into it by getting married and everything else like that. And then, he's just dealing with it. So like, he's an asshole, but I don't think he's a villain per se. And the same with Peter. Peter wouldn't have done what he did if his mother wasn't being tortured. I didn't get a sense that he was biding his time to do his first kill, a la Dexter or something, right? It was more like he's just reacting to the situation, and because of who he is and what he knows, he actually has a solution to the problem. May not be a good solution. It may not be but he has one, at the very least.
Yeah, it might not be necessarily a morally correct, or however way you want to word it, decision to kill, but it's a solution, and he knows that a lot of people's lives would be a lot better if this person wasn't in their lives anymore, whether he was a good or bad, or just an asshole, because he really was to Kirsten Dunst's character. Oh my goodness, he tortured her. And the interesting part was, it was how much psychological it was, of just being in the same room, and just how even just little slight comments just was like, oh, just awful.
Yep.
That scene where she's trying to play the piano and he's upstairs playing that same song but better.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh my goodness, that's just like, that was cringe. You want to talk cringe, man? That was like, oh, I just felt so bad for her, and it was just like, what a jerk. What a jerk.
He's a bully. There's no way around it. He's just straight up bully. Are bullies the villains? In some stories, yeah. I don't know if he's necessarily the villain in this one, but yeah, he's definitely a bully.
And I can see that.
Any perceived weakness, he takes some joy in poking at it.
Yeah, I know people like that. They were the ones that picked on me in high school. Anyway, I feel like we're winding down here a little bit. Is anybody else have anything else to go before we go to ratings?
No,
I'm good.
I'm good.
I think we picked this one apart pretty good, and I think it was a good pick, Crit. Very interesting pick. Yeah,
Yep.
absolutely.
Glad you appreciate it.
Yeah. It definitely was. I'm not thinking about anything, but this could have been one of those movies where if you look at the movies I like and dislike, it could have gone either way.
Mm-hmm.
And stuff like that. But I'm actually having a tendency to lean more into these movies the more and more we've watched them and talked about them and dissected them and things like that. I enjoy them more. And maybe I'm thinking about anything again. Maybe I'll enjoy that more a second time.
No.
But don't get your hopes up. That would be an interesting podcast. So going back to movies that we've hated. Or somebody in the group has hated and rewatching it again to see if you liked it.
Yeah, one of our genres might be forced rewatch, and like you have to pick from. Yeah,
that would be really interesting. Oh my goodness! Well, we were having John watch Santa Claus the movie, and
God no. I will call in sick.
He's going to be sick that day. He doesn't know when it is, but it's going to be that day. Oh, that's awesome. And yet I would be open to watching. I'm thinking about ending things hesitantly, but I would still do it. I don't think I want to watch Santa Claus the movie again either. And I'm the one that picked it. That's why I always preview my movies again. All right. All right, let's go on to ratings and stuff. I will give you my rating. I gave this movie a 7 out of 10. I wouldn't own it, but I thought this was an excellent movie. I thought the cinematography is great. I thought the acting was fantastic. I'm not even exactly sure why. I almost gave it an 8. But to be honest with you, I really thought this was very well done and stuff. But it's definitely not everybody's cup of tea. It's definitely a slow burn, things like that. Slow in parts, but very intriguing. And if you like movies like that, then I would definitely recommend it. But okay, so yep, that's my take on it. Who wants to go next?
I'd probably watch this with my mom. I don't know how she'd enjoy it, but I'd watch it with her.
Does she like westerns?
Maybe
it's a western, John. That's all it is. Come on.
Yeah.
Fair enough. Crit, what do you think, man?
Yeah, I'd give this an 8 out of 10. It's interesting thriller with layers of interpretation, which is kind of cool.
Mm-hmm. No, I agree. And I do not regret watching this movie in any way, shape, or form. So, and I'm glad we did. That's why I like it. I like this group. I like it that, you get how we have all kind of different aspects, and we kind of get different, from every person, we get different, a different kind of movie that everybody kind of leans into a little bit more. And that's the nice, wonderful thing about this group,
Yeah, Josh does fun movies. John does movies from his childhood, and I do pretentious movies. So it works.
You said it. I did. But you're not wrong. I've been trying to go a little deeper. I mean,
do you, man? You don't need to do anything else. That's good.
I'm going to. But we've talked in the past. My mind is becoming a little bit more open to the deeper stuff, and I'm actually enjoying that. So
having to actively watch a movie really does change the movie going experience for sure.
It really does.
I've seen that. Yeah.
I mean, I was not a Tarantino fan. I'm still not this is controversial. I'm not a Pulp Fiction fan. I really am not. I have watched it multiple times. It's still just not. And I've never watched Tarantino after that. Well, now I've watched all Tarantino because of you guys, and I actually like almost all the rest of it. I don't know why I don't like Pulp Fiction. I'm still wondering
okay.
that too.
Yeah.
Anyways, all right, guys. So that finishes up our month of character studies, and that was a very cool topic, Crit. I was really hesitant going into it, like, what in the heck are we going to talk about? But we talked about a lot. So interesting topic. Again, that pretentious. No, I'm just joking.
Yeah.
And here comes
we all
the fun
have our
side.
roles.
I know my role in this life. Let's see. So finishing up, now we're going to go on to next month's genre, and I'll be presenting my 3 movies starting out that next month's genre. And the genre that I picked was movies that maybe you're not going to be looking at for new movies, because you kind of have to seen the movies on this next genre, but that's okay. And that's sequels that you liked better than the original is the genre that I picked.
Mhm.
And I've always thought this was interesting that, people are like, I love that movie. That second movie is just amazing, type thing. But the first one was okay, type movies. Because it used to be that kind of genre of everybody hated a sequel. Everybody thought a sequel was going to be awful. And then Back to the Future kind of started changing that. And a lot of movies changed that.
Yeah. Tremors too.
Yeah. Tremors too.
No.
That's the first one I think of, Crit, when we're thinking about sequels that I like better.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. Ghoulies 2.
Yeah. Critters too.
Critters 2. Oh my heck, those are awful movies. Fun, but awful.
What's your
so
hints?
anyways, so here's my fun ones. Number 1 of the 3. This movie is about genealogy. All right. Number 2. This movie has many mothers and lots of kids. And number 3. Is This My Life? Is My Life Real, the movie?
Okay.
I know what the first one is. I'm fairly positive.
Wow, really? I tried to go hard on that one.
Fairly positive.
Okay.
Well, do you want to watch that one then?
I do want to watch that one, actually.
Okay, we'll go with number 1 then, John or Josh.
Wow. Okay, that was fast. When we get to it, I want you to tell me what you think it is. All right. So number 2, what do you think it might have been? This movie has many mothers and lots of kids.
Oh, I have no idea.
Yeah, I didn't know that one either.
It's Aliens, because of course I'm going to pick my favorite trilogies, and because there's the Mother Alien and the ship's called Mother,
right,
with lots of kids, the aliens, and then number 3. I think you guys would have really liked this if you had picked this one too. It was Is This My Life? The movie, which was Blade Runner 2049.
Oh, okay. That would have been a good one too.
Yeah, I thought that would have been a fun one to talk about. There's so much nuances and fun stuff in that one. And then number 1, what did I pick for number 1?
I'm fairly certain it's The Empire Strikes Back.
The Empire Strikes Back. This movie is about genealogy. I'm surprised you picked that one.
I think there's a lot we can talk about.
Yeah, I do too.
I think there's a lot to talk about in it.
Awesome. I'm glad. I've been wanting to get this one on here for a long time, and I saw I honestly think usually when there's a movie I really want to be on here, it never gets picked. So, so I'm glad you picked it. I was hoping that the genealogy thing would throw you a little off, but I couldn't think of a thing of, you are my father type, I'm your father, to get around that too much. I started trying to think of like Winter or Hoth.
You forget that I used to be Mormon. I know what genealogy means.
I know.
Wow. Okay.
Oh, it's funny and stuff. So, all right. Well, I'm excited to talk about Empire Strikes Back. Finally got it on here. Finally.
Yep.
All right.
It'll be good. I think there's a lot to talk about.
All right, man. All right. I'm excited. And it'll be a good excuse for you to watch it for the 100th time. So, all right. And, well, I guess we will move on to the end. And to everybody out there listening, thank you for supporting our channel. Please click the like button if you like what you heard here. And as always, May you be excellent to each other and live long and prosper from all of us here at Josh's House of Nerd. Have a good night.
Thanks for watching. For more nerdy awesomeness, please like and subscribe and check out